The night began like countless others on the cold waters of Loch Ness. A thin mist hovered just above the surface, drifting slowly, as if the lake itself were breathing. The fishermen had worked these waters for years. They knew its moods, its rhythms, and its quiet dangers. To them, darkness was not fear, it was familiarity. But that night, something was different. The silence came first. Not the peaceful kind of silence that brings rest, but a heavy, unnatural stillness. The wind faded. The gentle slap of water against the boat disappeared. Even the distant sounds of wildlife, the birds, the insects, the subtle movement of life, vanished. The lake, vast and ancient, became eerily calm, as if it were holding its breath. One fisherman paused, gripping his oar a little tighter. He felt it before he understood it. A tightening in the chest. A quiet warning rising from somewhere deep inside. He looked around, expecting someone else to speak first. No one did. Experience told them to trust their routine, not their instincts. So they pushed forward. This is how danger often enters our lives, quietly. Rarely does chaos announce itself with noise. It doesn't knock loudly or shout warnings. Instead, it arrives as discomfort, as unease, as a subtle loss of peace we can't explain. We feel it in relationships that no longer feel safe, in work environments that drain us, in choices that look right on the surface but feel wrong inside. Like the fishermen, we often ignore these early signals because they don't seem logical. The nets were lowered into the water. The boat drifted forward, and still the silence remained. This moment is where protecting your peace truly begins. Not when the attack happens, not when life explodes into chaos, but when the quiet feels wrong. Peace is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of alignment. When that alignment disappears, your mind knows before your logic does. The fishermen told themselves stories to stay calm. It's just a slow night. The weather is changing. The lake has always been strange. These explanations soothed the mind but betrayed the soul. In life we do the same. We explain away red flags. We rationalize discomfort. We silence our intuition because listening to it might force us to change. But silence is a language. That ancient lake had existed long before those men, long before stories of monsters or legends. And when such a place grows unnaturally quiet, it is not empty, it is aware. The same is true of your inner world. When your peace starts fading without a clear reason, something beneath the surface is moving. Ignoring that moment is often the most dangerous choice we make. Protecting your peace means learning to pause when the silence feels heavy. It means stepping back before the water erupts. It means understanding that discomfort is not weakness. It is information. The fishermen believed strength meant pushing forward. True strength would have been listening. In modern life, we are taught to override our inner warnings. Hustle harder. Stay longer. Endure more. But endurance without awareness leads straight into the storm. The people who survive the deepest waters are not the loudest or the bravest. They are the most attentive. That night on Loch Ness, the men failed to respect the silence. And in doing so, they crossed an invisible line between safety and danger. So ask yourself, where in your life has the water gone quiet? Where has your peace slowly disappeared, even though nothing bad has happened yet? That is where your attention belongs. After the silence, calm returned, or at least, it appeared to. The surface of Loch Ness smoothed itself out, dark and reflective, like polished glass under the moonlight. From a distance, nothing looked wrong. The boat floated steadily. The nets moved gently with the current. If anyone had been watching from the shore, they would have seen nothing but ordinary fishermen doing ordinary work. And that is the most dangerous illusion of all. The men began to relax. Shoulders loosened. Conversation resumed in hushed tones. One of them even laughed, breaking the tension. Whatever unease they had felt earlier was pushed aside by what their eyes could see. The lake looked calm. The situation seemed under control. So they convinced themselves they were safe. This is how the surface lies to us. In life, the most destructive forces rarely announce themselves in chaos. They hide beneath calm appearances. A relationship looks stable, but underneath it drains your energy. A job seems secure, but slowly erodes your sense of worth. A habit feels harmless, until one day you realize it has shaped your entire identity. On the surface, everything looks fine, but beneath it, something is growing. Beneath that dark water, something massive moved. The fishermen couldn't see it, but they felt it. A slow, powerful shift under the boat. Not violent, not rushed, just present. The lake wasn't empty. It was occupied. The creature did not need to rush, it had patience. It had depth. This is how inner monsters behave. Unresolved fears, suppressed anger, unhealed trauma, ignored boundaries. They don't scream. They wait. They stay hidden until the moment you are fully committed, fully exposed, and least prepared to escape. Calm is their camouflage. One fisherman leaned over the side, peering into the water, trying to see what logic could not explain. But darkness hides depth. You cannot measure danger by what the surface shows you. By the time something reveals itself, it has already been there for a long time. Protecting your peace means understanding this truth: calm is not always safe. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. If something looks fine, we assume it is fine. If there is no visible conflict, we ignore internal conflict. But peace is not something you judge with your eyes. It is something you feel in your nervous system. When the surface is calm but your spirit is tense, there is a reason. The lake suddenly rippled, not violently, but enough to send a quiet wave across the boat. The men froze. That was the moment they understood. Whatever was beneath them was not a myth, not a story. It was real, and it was close. In life, we often wait for proof before we act. But proof usually arrives too late. The fishermen didn't need to see the creature to know they were in danger. They felt it. And so do you, when something in your life is wrong beneath the surface. Ignoring depth is how people lose their peace. The monster of Loch Ness becomes more than a creature here. It becomes a symbol. A symbol of everything we avoid facing because it's uncomfortable, because it requires change, because it forces us to let go. What we don't confront doesn't disappear. It waits. And when it rises, it doesn't ask permission. The lesson is simple, but not easy. Stop trusting the surface. Learn to read what is beneath. Pay attention to the tension you carry for no clear reason. To the exhaustion that doesn't match your workload. To the anxiety that exists even when life looks fine. That is where the monster lives. Protect your peace by respecting depth. In water, in people, and within yourself. Because the calmest surface can hide the greatest danger. The first violent movement did not come from the creature itself. It came from the men. The boat rocked suddenly, not because the monster had struck, but because panic had entered the space. One fisherman stumbled backward. Another shouted a warning too late to be useful. Hands shook. Breathing became shallow. In that moment, fear arrived before understanding, and fear changes everything. The water beneath them surged, and the boat lurched hard to one side. Nets tangled. Equipment clattered across the deck. But the most dangerous thing on that boat was not the unseen creature below. It was the loss of control above it. Panic spread faster than the ripples on the lake, stealing clarity, stealing coordination, stealing peace. This is always how fear works. Fear does not wait for facts. It does not pause for logic. It rushes in loud and overwhelming and demands immediate reaction. When fear takes control, the mind narrows. Options disappear. Every decision becomes either reckless or frozen. In that state, people don't respond to danger. They amplify it. One fisherman froze completely, staring into the black water as if his body had forgotten how to move. Another reacted in the opposite way, pulling at the nets wildly, making the situation worse. Both responses came from the same place: panic, and panic never protects. It only accelerates collapse. In life, fear attacks your peace long before the actual threat reaches you. A single piece of bad news, a sudden change, an unexpected confrontation. The moment fear enters, it begins stripping away your stability. You stop thinking clearly. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You act too quickly or not at all. Often, the damage done in those moments comes not from what happens to you, but from how you respond to it. The fishermen had faced storms before. They had endured rough waters and dangerous nights, but this was different. Storms are visible. Waves announce themselves. This threat was hidden, and fear thrives in uncertainty. When you don't understand what you're facing, fear fills in the blanks, and it always paints the darkest picture. The creature beneath the boat did not need to attack immediately. Fear was already doing its work. This is the real lesson of that night. Monsters don't win by force alone. They win by stealing your peace. Once your peace is gone, you are already defeated. Your body becomes tense. Your judgment weakens. Your strength drains away, not because you are powerless, but because you are overwhelmed. One fisherman shouted, "Stay steady." His voice cut through the chaos, not loud but firm. That single command shifted something. It didn't remove the danger, but it slowed the fear. And in that pause, clarity began to return. Peace is not the absence of danger. Peace is control in the presence of it. Protecting your peace does not mean denying fear. Fear is natural. It is a signal. But when fear takes the wheel, disaster follows. The men who survived that night were not the strongest or the bravest. They were the ones who regained control of their minds. In modern life, panic is constant. News cycles, social pressure, financial stress, and endless noise keep people in a state of fear. And fear, when sustained, becomes exhaustion. Exhaustion becomes poor decisions. Poor decisions destroy peace. The fisherman learned something vital in those moments. You cannot fight what you fear if fear is already controlling you. The lake shook again. The threat was still there. But now, there was order on the boat. Breathing slowed. Movements became deliberate. Fear lost its grip. That is how peace is protected, not by escaping danger, but by refusing to let fear define your response. Because once panic takes over, the monster doesn't have to attack. You do the damage yourself. Chaos does not arrive politely. It crashes in, demanding an answer before you feel ready to give one. On that night at Loch Ness, after the panic had shaken the boat and fear had tested every man's nerve, the fishermen reached a moment that would decide everything. The water churned beneath them. The presence below was undeniable now, and in that suspended second between shock and action, each man faced the same choice: fight, flee, or find stillness. One fisherman gripped a heavy tool, raising it as if force alone could solve what logic could not. Another moved toward the edge of the boat, eyes fixed on escape, ready to abandon everything if it meant survival. These reactions were instinctive, driven by adrenaline and fear, but instincts, when unchecked, are often reckless. Then there was the third response, quiet, deliberate, almost invisible. One man steadied himself, planting his feet firmly against the rocking deck. He lowered his voice instead of raising it. He slowed his movements instead of rushing them. He didn't deny the danger, but he refused to let chaos control his mind. In the middle of noise, he chose stillness. This is the response that saves lives. In moments of crisis, most people believe action means strength. They believe speed equals power. But the truth is, uncontrolled action is just panic wearing a mask. Fighting blindly wastes energy. Fleeing without direction leads straight into greater danger. Stillness, however, creates clarity, and clarity creates strategy. The fisherman who found stillness began giving calm, precise instructions. Cut the net. Balance the weight. Keep the bow steady. Each command slowed the chaos. Each decision reclaimed a piece of control. The monster was still there, but its power was reduced the moment the men stopped feeding it with fear. This is where the deeper lesson lies. Life constantly throws us into chaos. Arguments, loss, failure, sudden change. In those moments, we feel pressure to react immediately, to defend, to run, to prove something. But reacting without clarity often deepens the damage. Stillness is not weakness, it is discipline. Protecting your peace means learning when not to move. Stillness allows you to see what panic hides. It helps you separate what you can control from what you cannot. The fishermen could not control the creature beneath the water, but they could control their balance, their teamwork, and their direction. That distinction made all the difference. Modern life rarely allows stillness. Noise surrounds us. Opinions flood us. Urgency is celebrated. But urgency without purpose destroys peace. When everything feels like an emergency, nothing receives wisdom. That night, the man who chose stillness didn't become a hero because he was fearless. He became a leader because he mastered himself. He understood that the mind must be calm before the body can act effectively. That lesson applies far beyond a boat on a dark lake. When chaos enters your life, you always have the same three choices. You can fight emotionally, saying things you can't take back. You can flee mentally, avoiding responsibility or reality. Or you can pause, breathe, center yourself, and respond with intention. Stillness creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, peace lives. The water surged one final time. The boat held steady. The men worked together, no longer scattered by fear. The monster did not win that night. Not because it was defeated, but because it was not allowed to control their actions. That is what protecting your peace truly means. Not escaping chaos, not overpowering it, but standing calm within it. Because when you find stillness in the storm, you take away chaos's greatest weapon, control over your mind.